It is time to call to order.
Let's make sure that we're up and running.
Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Osborne School District, number 8. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and school presentation.
So we don't have a presentation tonight. So
Perfect.
I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and
Wonderful.
then I'll ask a governing board member to lead our land acknowledgement.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance Oh, it's on the. Is anybody on the full packet? Any board members? Want to go for it?
Sure, I'll read it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Osborne School District Land Acknowledgement. Arizona is home to 22 tribal nations. Osborne School District is situated on the homelands of the Akimel, O'odham, and Hifash people. Osborne School District recognizes the original inhabitants of these lands and recognizes they still reside throughout the city of Phoenix. We recognize their wisdom, impact, and generosity towards us. Osborne School District is surrounded by the original Salt River canals that were constructed by the ancestral Sonoran people, the Hohokam. These canals created a livelihood for the people and are still in use today. We acknowledge the modern indigenous people that inhabited this area as well as their Sonoran Desert ancestors, the Hohokam.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, Luis.
much.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to district celebrations and announcements, recognition of Osborne students, staff, and district departments, and awarding of the month Spread Love Awards.
All right. Well, there's a whole slew of things that I wrote in there. With this meeting, you can see there's not as many people here. We're day 2 after spring break, and sometimes when we've got school presentations, it's a lot of coordination, getting together with parents, making sure they can get their kids here, all of that type of stuff. It can be kind of hard to do right after a vacation when you're 2 days afterwards. So we are not doing any school celebrations this month. And so I just put a list of things in there that have just been going on within the district in terms of celebrations and recognition and acknowledgement. We're about to begin we're not actually beginning our state testing. We actually just completed the Azella exams that happened over the past month or so. And so just a big congratulations to all of our English learners that were taking those exams, that put their absolute best into it. Their teachers for all of their hard work, Miss Artea and her crew. And, not only have they been doing all of the work with preparing our students and staff for that, but also our audit of our language acquisition service programs, within the district. So a lot of good hard work on this behalf of staff and students. Testing is going to be beginning for our 3rd through 8th graders, starting with science assessments. Is science this week?
Yes.
All right. So our 5th and 8th graders will be taking the Arizona Science Assessment. Not everyone takes that, just those 2 grade levels. And then we'll be starting up with our English language arts and math assessment. So all the best to our 3rd through 8th grade students in the upcoming month, as well as their teachers for the teachers, all staff at the school that do so much to take care of our kids during this time. And recognizing, of course, the hard work that the curriculum department has been doing in preparing for this busy testing season. Want to really acknowledge our families that were so present on our campuses right before spring break. We had some amazing things happening from Read Across America Week. How many of you were able to make it to one of our schools to read? So we had a few of you. We had some reading picnics at many of our campuses. We had parent-teacher conferences. So campuses were alive with families. That Read Across America Got to recognize Debbie and John and the transportation department for, did you guys check out on social media and see the work that the transportation department did in reading to students, bringing kids on the bus and reading to them? What a wonderful way to get Read Across America kicked off within our schools. And with that, we're going to take a pause for a moment and our recognition of our spread love, that love standing for living our values every day. We have our district departments that are going to recognize some folks. All the departments on the operations side of things, so from maintenance and transportation, child nutrition, IT, HR, and business services. Now, recognizing that from our cafeterias, starting it, and our recognition, folks get here, Corey? 6 a.m. And same, what's the earliest time our drivers are getting here? 6:30. Yeah, so we're not expecting our drivers and our cafeteria staff to be here from 6 o'clock this morning until, 7 o'clock this evening with meetings. So they'll be able to recognize those staff in department meetings and making sure that they're recognized in front of their peers. But we've got a few other directors that are going to be here to recognize someone from each of their departments. And we'll start with Dr. Woodland.
Hello. I got you. So I am recognizing Osborne's very own HR coordinator, Daniela, and she didn't know why she was coming to this meeting. So surprise. So I want to go backwards to go forward. Daniela Mendoza first came to Osborne as a student. Wow. And today she's being recognized for growth. So she matriculated on. The growth continued. She decided, however, after being a student in Osborne and graduating from high school and so forth, to come back. And in October of 2013, she returned to Osborne as an educational assistant and therefore as a member of our staff. She served in that instructional capacity until 2017, where she transitioned out of her role and decided to come back in 2019. She later transitioned to clerical positions here within the district, serving as the district office receptionist, and then transitioning more specifically to our existing HR team, where she served as an HR technician initially, before transitioning into a role for special education as a specialist there. When I think about growth in particular as a core value, Daniela has operated in and demonstrated mastery of every position within the HR department, and her knowledge is invaluable because she served as our receptionist, she served as our HR technician, and she's now serving as our HR coordinator. She is the person who's responsible for ensuring that people have their health insurance, their short-term disability, that people benefits are terminated. She's ensuring that people get FMLA leave, that they're taking leave of absences when they need it, that they're getting that time with their families and or their spouses as necessary. And the growth continues. In her new role as an HR coordinator, which she served in this capacity for the last year, she has been stretched in various ways, but most recently in regards to supervising others for the first time. So with that being said, that is why Daniela Mendoza was selected for the growth core value. And her growth does not stop. She is actually enrolled in a program, so she will be leaving shortly to go over to Phoenix College, where she is taking a course. But without further ado, Daniela. So I'm giving her her certificate as well as her pin, and she'll be wearing this more when you see her.
Thank you so much.
All right, Deanna.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The award is for Frances Theron, and it's for the core value of relationships. Frances is such a joy to work with. She's helpful, polite, and always ready to listen and provide guidance when you have a question. Frances' soft-spoken manner makes her very approachable and easy to share a smile with. Frances approaches each interaction with care and kindness. Her persistent smile, sense of humor, and collaborative nature helps to foster positive relationships. She listens to understand, seeks input and feedback for continued growth, and exceeds expectations by going above and beyond in work every single day, which further cultivates the connections she initiates with others. In the relatively short time of work with Frances, I've found her to be a lovely person that's consistently pleasant, exemplifying not only relationships, but all of Osborne's core values. Thank you for all your work.
Hey, Jamal, is your staff member here? Come on up.
Yeah, come on up, Jamal.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening,
Evening.
President, members, and Dr. Robert. I want to talk a little bit about Mr. Gerardo Bataya. He joined us in 2021, 22, and 23 so far. He is a very mature, calm, and caring person. He cares about team. He shows a lot of growth, and he does research when we need help. He jump in to try find a solution with us. He cover for others when they are not there. He immediately jump in to help others. He also help us a lot with parents who speak Spanish only. He is very good, and that is really needed in many occasions. And all the staff and the parents likes him, and he's very friendly. We are fortunate to have him. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamal.
Thank you, Jamal.
Appreciate it.
Those relatively small departments each recognize one person. Both John and Corey, having larger departments, have 3 people each that they're going to be celebrating, and it'll all be on our social media. We'll try and get some pictures of them getting their awards there. So maybe if we could just take a few minutes to take a couple photos, and then we can hop back in.
That sounds good. It's 5:44 right now. Let's come back at 5:50, 6 minutes from now. Hopefully that's enough time for Brendan to snap a few photos and come back. All right, we'll see you guys in 6 minutes. We'll take a quick break.
struggle.
Got one of my mentees is actually going to be a finalist for a principal position.
Cool. That's great.
Support him.
That's great. Okay, it is 5:50. We're going to go ahead and come back into session. Love, I'm in court a lot, so I never get to use the gavel, so I'm going to use it a lot during these meetings here. So, anyways, we're moving on to the consent agenda, approval of items since February meeting. Are there any comments or discussion regarding the items on the consent agenda? If not, I will take a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Moving on to the call to the public. Do we have, Lisa, do we have anybody calling to the public today?
No, we don't.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll move on then to board presentation. Do we have a board
No
presentation
presentation
today? I didn't
tonight,
think
no,
so.
just on to reports.
We are rocking and rolling here today. Now, moving on to administrative reports. These are administrative reports here that you have in your board packets. Any questions about any of the administrative reports or comments?
I had a quick question. So I was looking at the enrollment report, and so I saw some negatives, even though compared to the beginning of the school year, it's still a good number. But are we doing anything like talking to those families, figuring out why we have those, like why they're leaving?
Yeah, so every month you're going to see, within that enrollment report, you'll see pluses and minuses on every single campus. Although that number that you do see, actually, those pluses and minuses are year to year. So that's from March of 22 through February of 23. So it gives you a 12-month plus and minus. But there are month-to-month pluses and minuses. They're more like the, 1 or 2 on this campus, maybe 4 or 5 on that campus. In January sometimes, or February actually, we see some pluses happening more as some districts exercise their open enrollment policies in different manners and move students out. A lot of times we see an influx of students that wind up coming our way after that 100th day type of thing. But in terms of, I can certainly have principals report back to me and get that to you in terms of what they're finding in terms of exit interviews with families as they go. Nothing that I can necessarily talk to you about right now, but I can certainly ask, and if you would please be so kind during future agenda items too, if you can mention, bring that up and we can put it on just so that I'm prepared to get that input from principals, and then we'll be able to have that discussion.
Perfect,
But I don't
thank
know
you.
if they're prepared to, come up and, I think they would have to talk with their front office staff to collect that info.
Thank you.
I think that's a good comment in terms of collecting that information. Exit interviews can be very telling, and just, we want to work on retention always, so I think that would be helpful. Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm going to move on to action items. First action item is recommendation to approve the 2023-24 Employee Fringe Benefits Plan. I think this is Dr. Woodland. I see you coming up.
Hello again. So I am presenting this on behalf of COO Toscano. So the recommendation is to approve our 23-24 Employee Fringe Benefits Plans. I do want to give context because I know we have new board members and this is a new plan year, so I want to be as descriptive as possible and succinct. I know you've already seen the packet, so I'll kind of go over the highlights, if you will. In regards to background, the Kairos Insurance Trust rates for the upcoming 23-24 year reflect a 5% increase for the copay plan, the PPO, and then our 2 high deductible plans. Please note that those are free plans to employees for just coverage of themselves. And then the core plan is one that the employees can elect, and that is one that they would pay for themselves. And the core plan has that 8% increase. Continuing in the background, the district will continue to provide those free no-cost monthly premiums for those first 3 options. And then employees do have the option to cover their dependents, which will be an additional cost to the employee. The district provides employer basic life coverage of $50,000 for all benefits eligible staff. And then in regards to ancillary benefits, we have dental, vision, and short-term disability offerings, work site benefits, life insurance, flexible spending accounts, 403B, 457B, and then Roth 403B voluntary retirement savings plans included in the attached documents, as well as some additional things. In regards to legal, the policies that align to our fringe benefit offerings are cited, as well as the financial implications. You'll note that the 5% increase on employer health insurance costs is a total of $94,000, of which $60,000 is deducted from our M&O. Before making the recommendation, I'd like to highlight some things. On the page after the board cover page, so to speak, there is a hey, what's new? So I wanted to kind of go over a couple of the highlights from there. In regards to our Delta dental offering, there's two options. There's Delta Dental and TDA. TDA Dental had no change. The cost will remain the same. Delta Dental had a 3% increase, which it hasn't had an increase in the last couple of years, so this was an anticipated one. And then our vision didn't have an increase either. If you looked in the other benefit enhancements on that same page, you'll see that Teladoc coverage will be available at no cost under all medical plans, including the high deductible health plans. An additional thing to highlight there is the number 2, which says that there is a dedicated mental health nurse to assist employees with their mental health and well-being needs, which I know Board Member Peralta has mentioned in the past. Then we also have a new offering, which is a lifestyle management program for employees called Real Appeal. It's an online weight loss program offering that will be extended to employees this year. And then our gym membership fees have increased by $3, but the offerings for gym memberships has been expanded. Additional things that are new, that are technically ancillary benefits, is number 8 there, which is worksite offerings. So there's a new worksite offering of hospital indemnity, critical illness, or accident insurance, which will take care of staff who may not be eligible for things like short-term disability. There's an explanation for all of said things, as well as the amounts. And with that in mind, it is recommended that the governing board approve the employee fringe benefits for fiscal year 23-24 as presented.
Great. Any questions?
I do have a question. So I know this may be something that we consider later on down the road, and I know that the district has looked into how do we lower costs, particularly for those with dependents and spouses. Comparing this to other districts, I would say we're kind of middle of the road, maybe not. Okay.
So I'm so glad you asked that. CEO Toscano was pretty diligent, and we actually looked out to do some comparisons. So thank you for mentioning that. Kairos's rate increase of 5% is actually under market trends. It's one of the really good reasons why we're happy to continue our partnership with them. Some districts around us saw double-digit increases, whereas ours are 5 on 4 of the plans and then 8 on 1 of them. So we're under market trends for local districts, and then as well as some of the national averages that were reported from the company.
Yeah, but the monthly cost, I would say compared to, so I know increase, yes, in terms of percentage, but it's still pretty high for a family. Our lowest is $815 a month, which, particularly looking at classified pay, that's a huge chunk of the paycheck. So I just, I think as a district, just looking to find different ways to lower that cost. I know right now we have an opportunity with ESSER, which is a short-term temporary fix, but maybe that could be something. I know talking to Dr. Robert, how when we compare the different things, that we can do with those costs, is it a better benefit to do that versus other things? I don't know. But I just would want to know what kind of options are we looking at to lower those costs for families and spouses. And then, looking at, are there people that leave our profession or leave our district because of healthcare costs? I know people personally that I've worked with that do leave, or they take, more of a longer leave of absence because of those costs. And healthcare is, unfortunately for our profession, something that is a huge chunk of our pay. I'm also, wondering, and again, these are not questions I expect you to answer here, but, there aren't a lot of people that are taking the care that have families and spouses, but if there was a lower cost, would they? And how do we, how do we market that as a way to get, new staff members here at the school when we can say, hey, our costs are a lot lower for our healthcare than other districts. And maybe, based on what you're sharing too, maybe we do use that as a tool to recruit and retain staff.
Yeah, in terms of, I appreciate you bringing that forward. In terms of leveraging opportunity, at the last meeting, we already committed a substantial portion of our ESSER dollars. So unfortunately, we don't have that in terms of being able to leverage. And I kind of explained a little to you, during the break that we took. But, just for everybody, one of the things in making those decisions, trying to make them as utilitarian as possible, spreading that good to as many people as possible, is examining whether or not, let's say of the $2 million that we had for retention stipends, that we put forward. Let's say we had taken a chunk of that and used that as a way to subsidize costs. That definitely would have been a benefit to a lot of people that may have chosen the health benefit. So we definitely could have gotten some leverage out of that. Part of the decision in not doing that, because that was brought up in terms of what some of the things that we could do. Part of the rationale behind using it in the way that we did is that everybody got the monetary benefit and then could choose to use that monetary benefit, of what they got for this one-time payment to subsidize their own costs beyond what was given in terms of salary. That's a possibility, but we do have some unallocated, contingent funds. So, we could look at that as a possibility. That may take a little bit more time right now, just to kind of examine. We left that as contingent for a reason, just to see if there are any, as a COVID relief, if there are any, that's what the ESSER funds came for, if there are any needs that may need to be addressed to be able to have a pot of money available. Perhaps if we have unused funds, because those are going to expire, so if we do have unused funds coming forward, perhaps that could be used to subsidize in the coming year. But perhaps not right now, but something that certainly can discuss with Ms. Toscano, more in depth. But, just a little bit of background as to some of that conversation that has been had about the potential of leveraging some of that money for things other than those retention stipends, and the rationale behind why we chose to go that way. But this is a long time concern and conversation that we need to keep having, because we still haven't come up with solutions for it, but we always address the limited funds that we do have. And this comes up every year in education. We have our crumbs, and we have to decide how far we're going to spread those crumbs, and we make prioritized decisions. And this board makes those. You're given options that the budget committee will have worked through, or different committees will have worked through, with setting prioritized choices and kind of moving from there. But this has been one of those things that has long been a priority that hasn't climbed to the top of the priority pile, but still of critical importance.
Is there a committee that meets either annually or every so often when we're deciding what plans, and how often and who, if so, how often do they meet, and who would be on that committee, and how do they review?
Our plan offerings are discussed as a part of budget committee.
Okay.
because it has the financial tie to it. Budget committee meets about once a month.
Once a month.
Yeah.
I'm on it
But
now.
recognize too, that budget committee is limited in scope. Like there's a certain level of expertise that we put Emerald and Colleen in charge of going out and negotiating and leveraging and working with the Kairos group to get, or looking towards other groups. So, you know, we're part of that consortium, and they have representation as you know, chief financial officers and human resources directors to represent the district within that consortium. So that's not something that staff participates in. The staff participation is when our representatives to the consortium bring back our negotiated interests, and then we look at how that goes within our full budget offerings and what we're trying to negotiate. So it's not direct participation right at the level of determining plan content. That's what Dr. Woodland and Ms. Toscano do on our behalf, and then they bring that forward.
Any other questions? I think it's a great idea. I mean, we've been talking about off and on about how difficult it is to be a teacher and staff with a family, especially. I think it would probably merit maybe some time in the work study to really look at some things that we can do. I mean, what we're talking, healthcare costs are definitely a component of it. Parental leave is a component of it. I think just childcare costs are a big component of it. We lose too many good teachers and staff because it becomes unaffordable when you have kids. Like I see it all the time. So I think, you know, probably not for this agenda item, but I think it would be really good to get our heads around this issue comprehensively to see what we can do better to retain our teachers and staff when they have a family and support them.
I just had one other clarifying point, you know, and then you can, you know, get into making motions. At the beginning, when Dr. Woodland expressed that there was a 5% increase to the copay and the PPO and the high deductible plans, and that 8% increase to the core plan, that's an 8%, that the difference between the copay and the core plan, there's a district amount that's paid. So whatever the amount that is in the copay plan, that is reflected onto the core plan. So per month, it's an employee that's choosing to buy up to the core plan. It's how, if I'm scrolling through, I think it's somewhere around like $40 to $60 a month somewhere. $64 a month is the employee buy up. So that 8% is that they're feeling, most of that 8% is paid for by the district in that difference. It's the, you know, right, this year it's $45, next year it's $64. So that's at 8%.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It has passed. Moving on to recommendation to issue 2023-24 other professionals, classified staff, and administrator contracts.
Me again. Administration is recommending issuing our support professionals class exempt and administrators contracts for current salary amounts, and then using any amendment letters if increases are later funded through budget committee and allowable funds, of course. So it's recommended that the governing board approve issuing 23-24 support professionals, classified exempt, and administrative contracts. And the documents that follow are the language from our attorneys.
And just a point of clarification from how you introduced it at first, Ed, it was, you mentioned the word classified. I just want everyone to recognize this is classified exempt.
Classified exempt, yes.
And we still have one employee group, which is classified staff, and that's going to be our third issuance. So this is administrator, other support professionals, and classified exempt.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it has passed. Moving on to the next agenda item. I think it is the approval of first reading to revise policy KB parental involvement.
Me again. I was having a conversation with one of our attorneys, and it came to our attention that the way that policy KB is currently reflected in regards to parental involvement in education had an error. There was optional language included in our published version on our website under ASBA that needed to be omitted. So it's recommended that the governing board approve the revision of governing board policy KB, parental involvement in education. And you'll see in the burgundy strike-through language what is being recommended to omit, and this recommendation comes directly from our council as well.
And what's the reason? If there's optional language and we
It's optional
Apparently-
language.
we opted into it before, what's the reason that we should be opting out of it now?
Well, if you read through it, it says optional language. The following outline items do not double lines, setting, etc. So it's kind of like suggested language that's not germane to our district. For example, the district plan under this policy may also include making parents aware of the district parental involvement policy, including et cetera, et cetera. That's not our current practices. We were actually looking at this to determine background check versus fingerprinting. So our counsel, Brittany, was like, this entire portion shouldn't be here.
When we brought this to you the first time, there was long form, short form, and we should have made that determination at that time. We want the long form and black lined out. So we didn't do that. The whole thing went in with double set of language. So this is just tightening the policy.
Any questions?
And just to clarify, if we vote to approve this, it doesn't have to come back through a second reading.
It does.
It does.
This is the
Okay.
first reading.
Okay. And I guess my second question, is there a way, since we've already approved previously, is there a way to supersede that, or do we just?
We're doing it.
To do it in just one reading, it would have had to have been posted for, so we're just
Okay, thank you.
1 and 2. We'll make it super quick. In fact, we won't even talk about it next time. It'll be there. If you like, we can actually put it on the consent agenda.
Sounds good. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Moving on, approval of E-rate vendor selection infrastructure project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Woodland.
Good evening again. I'm seeking here the approval for E-rate vendor selection for infrastructure project. A company called Logicalis is the only bidder. We open by the rules. We open 28 days to have vendors to bid on the project, basically to provide the Wi-Fi for Solano only. The USAC, the company that take care of the program, will pay 85%, which is federal money, the federal money program, and then 15% Osborne pay. We're going to use a bond to pay for that.
And just, have it noted again, this is an E-rate project, which wouldn't be possible without Jamal's great work in getting on top of this for us.
Thank
So we
you.
would be paying 100% of the cost instead of 15%. But that 15% is going to come out of remaining bond funds.
Yes, we're using the leftover money from E-rate.
Wonderful. Any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
A motion.
Any second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thanks, Jamal.
Thank
Appreciate
you
your
very much.
diligence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next is an information discussion item on the FY 2022 School District Spending Report.
Wonderful, and this is where I'm going to have you drive for me, Mr. Stacy. We're going to pull up the Auditor General's annual spending report. You guys all got this electronically, correct?
Right.
So every year, the Auditor General report comes out, and I'm going to use maybe the next 10 minutes or so. There are lots of things to read here. There are hyperlinks you can go into. I'm just going to give a primer on kind of reading, how to go through what are the important things to notice about this report, and then you can peruse it on your own, and perhaps if there are future, further questions, you can feel free to ask me about it. So Brennan, can you scroll up a little bit? At the top of the report, there is a glossary. So we're going to go into the glossary first and go into spending areas. When you're looking at this report, every year, one of the big things about this report was there's conversation. The Auditor General puts out this report annually, and one of the biggest reasons that it's gotten so much discussion is that the Auditor General reports out classroom spending. And there were a lot of times that districts were shown to be spending less than 50% on in the classroom, and it became a huge furor. Our schools are getting all of this money, and they're just paying administrators, and nothing's going, less than 50% is going into the classroom. And a long time, we've always had around 50% of the dollars in instruction. The first thing we're going to do is look at what are the different operational spending areas. So you can look up here and you can see the first is instruction. So you can read through those things that denote instruction. So that's teachers, teachers' aides, substitute teachers, instructional supplies, field trips, all that type of stuff. That goes into instruction. For so long, we said that's not all it takes to bring things in the classroom directly to our children. We for so long argued that there are student support and instructional supports that benefit children directly, and long advocated for that to be included as classroom spending. So counselors, speech pathologists, social workers, your front office staff that works on attendance as supports for students, instructional supports with our special areas, with libraries, with professional development, with curriculum development. So all of those areas are included in classroom, those top three. It's classroom, student support, and instructional support. All together make up dollars in the classroom. It's no longer just the instruction piece. The state average is 69.5%. Of budgets being spent directly into the classroom. Those other areas of administration, maintenance, or what's listed as plant operations, food service, and transportation are those other areas. Let's back out of that and go back to the Osborne report. And before we get into the report too, there's a section there on district demographic info. So let's take a look at this stuff that's up there and what's important about it. So the first thing is you see how many students we have, the size, and look at what it says next to it. Medium large. You ever think of Osborne as a medium large district?
Yeah.
Well, we are. So click into that thing that says operational peer group. And go into district peer groups. This breaks down what exactly is an operational peer group. So they break this down into unified high school districts and elementary school districts. So when looking at how we spend operational dollars, we are compared, when it's talking about our peer group, we're compared with other elementary school districts in cities, and it breaks it down into medium large, medium, and medium small, all of that medium area of city elementary districts are who we're compared to. So we're in what's considered operational peer group number 9. We're compared to districts like Creighton Elementary, Murphy, Riverside, Tolleson, Baltz, Phoenixville, Crane, Madison, Isaac, Littleton, Avondale, Fowler, Liberty. Those are districts that are in our operational peer group. Just remember that for later. Scroll down a little bit more. and go down beyond that one. Okay, so that's transportation. We're in transportation group number 1, cities and suburbs. So it's broken down into cities and towns and rurals. And then it looks at miles per rider, so how far you're busing kids. So we are a city district, and we bus less than 180, in terms of the miles per rider, less than 180. So that's kind of who we're compared to, and keep scrolling down. And the last one is achievement peer groups. This again breaks down into unified, high school, and elementary school districts. And with this, it's separated by poverty. The poverty that they're talking about there is not what we normally think about with Title I schools in terms of free and reduced lunch. This poverty is the actual, like within your geographic area, what's considered the poverty rate. So we are in group number 11. So you can see that's an elementary school district in a city with a poverty rate in between 20 and 24%, basically. So when we look at our, how did our kids do on reading, math, science, it'll show you, here's what the state average was, here's your peer group average, and here's your average. So our peer group is other elementary schools in that 20 to 25%. Just so you know, our designation is 24%. So we're at the high end of our poverty group. There's only one group that's higher, and that's anyone from 25% and greater, right? So the highest that you're seeing in any of the elementary school districts in that next category is like 31% poverty. We're at that 24% poverty geographically for Osborne School District. So the districts that are in our peer group, achievement peer, are Crane. By the way, Crane is in Yuma. It's a district of about 13 schools, 6,000 kids in Yuma. So our achievement peers are Crane, Tolleson Elementary, Washington Elementary, Roosevelt, Tempe, Creighton, Riverside, and Fowler. All right? So when we get a little bit deeper into the report, we'll see that. Brendan, you can head us back to the Osborne page now. All right, so you can spend lots of time going through this. You look at that shows all those areas broken down in between classroom spending and non-classroom spending. We're spending basically what the state average is. We're at state average, I said, was 69.5%. We're at 69.9%. Basically, 70% of our dollars are going into the classroom. We're doing just like we should be doing. You can see those other areas in terms of food services, transportation, plant, and administration. Go on ahead and scroll down. Any questions so far? All right, keep scrolling. Go down a little bit more. All right, this next thing, and again, I'm just showing you, here are things on the report, here's ways to look at it. Spend some more time going in depth on your own on this. But that chart right there that's on the left, that's showing your 5-year spending plus and minus in each of those categories. So when you scroll over one, it'll tell you which category it is. Scroll over that one in the middle, Brendan, that is, what does it say there? Instructional support. Guess what? Over the past 5 years, so since COVID broke out until now, we're spending 3% more on instructional support than we used to be. That kind of makes sense, right? Can you drop that to the 1-year spending average? Not much variation from last year, no more than 1% difference in any of the category. So our spending is pretty much on average where we were last year, but breaking out from the 5-year look, there are some areas that are just around 1% off. The one that we're spending more in, but not that significant, is on those instructional supports, which makes 100% sense, since COVID broke out, that's increased since 2017. Questions on that part? All right, scroll down some more. This is our comparison now. This is operational efficiency. This breaks down you compared to your operational peers. So I showed you those different peer groups. This was that larger group of about 17 districts, and tells us what's the state average on each of these things, what is our peer average, how much did we spend, and then it'll, on the right-hand side, you can see it's gray and says comparable. That means we're basically doing just like our peers are. There's nothing that's significant. In some, it goes from very to somewhat to comparable to very and somewhat on the other end. So you could be very high, you could be very low compared to your peer districts. You could be high, you could be low, or you could be comparable. So in all those areas of administration, plant services, food services, you can see that we're comparable. The one area that is like, whoa, what's going on there? Transportation. Look at that. Compared to our peers, why are we so high when here we are, this small city district that has the fewest amount of miles, supposedly, that we drive our kids? Well, we run a ton of routes through McKinney-Vento for families that are experiencing homelessness. Just because they're experiencing homeless, one of the things that the McKinney-Vento Act does is it allows for educational continuity for students. So if during the school year they're experiencing homelessness, they lived here, or let's say they were here and or they were in Avondale, let's say, and then they come here to Osborne and they're at budget suites. We got a ton of our kids that are in budget suites, right? A lot of folks that are experiencing homelessness there. To have educational continuity, we will do transportation for students so that they can continue the school year right here in Osborne. So there are students that are there in budget suites that we pick up that are experiencing homelessness. There may be someone that was here in Osborne, living right here. They get into a homelessness situation and they're rooming with another family in Buckeye. We will send our bus or our transportation out there and bring them all the way in here to Osborne. Unfunded mandate, we cover that cost just so they can have the continuity of their same teacher, their same friends, and all of those things throughout the year. So because we have so many families that experience these types of situations that either live within our boundaries that we transport or that live way far outside of our boundaries that we continue to transport them, we have much higher than our peer averages. John, would you say that's accurate, or are there other things that add into that high transportation cost?
Pretty much hit it on the head.
Okay.
If I could ask a question about
Sure thing.
transportation. When we're sending transportation out to pick folks up, like you mentioned, is that the big yellow bus I see, or is that like a van? What does that look like? It's both. Do we track how, I guess, for lack of a better term, how full the buses are? And okay, we do. So I'd love to do maybe a bit of a dive down into that to see, I only bring this up because I see our wonderful bus driver every morning on my bike route in, and I'm sure they're going to pick up a bunch of kids after they're very nice and wave to me on my bike every morning over on Central and Indian School. But the buses seem pretty empty. But maybe they're, like I said, they're probably going to pick up a whole bunch of kids. But we'd love to learn more about kind of the science of that and why the numbers are what they are.
And it is a science, and Debbie could talk to you about
Yeah.
that extensively, the work
I'm
that she
sure.
does.
I'm sure there's like a whole art and a science involved, and just would love to learn a little bit more about that at a future date. And maybe it's just a sit down with you guys. But please tell the bus drivers thank you for the kind waves and smiles in the morning.
Sometimes for some of those long trips, you will see a bus that's going out, but a lot of times we use what we call our white fleet, so
Yeah.
those vans. Or sometimes we are it's still a cost to us, and it may be like those VEO or whatever transportation services.
Yeah.
But we're paying for it. So thus our high transportation costs. So that's the only thing that stands out in terms of high, medium, low in terms of comparability.
This cost also includes students with IEPs that have transportation on
Correct.
special ed buses too. Okay, thank you.
All right, keep scrolling, Brendan. Average teacher salary. All right, so this will show you over the past 5 years where our average teacher salary is. The line is showing you what the statewide average is. The bar graph is showing you our average. And you see that blue, dark blue part at the bottom? That's the amount from the Classroom Site Fund. So when we start talking about Prop 301 and getting that committee back together, you can see that that bar, that dark blue bar, is remaining pretty much the same. So when there was a legislative change that allowed you to spend more of your buckets, more from those, it's not necessarily separated into those buckets, that you could put more towards salaries. We never changed that practice. So that's something that we're going to be re-examining a bit more. But you can see that salary. Now, you may be looking at that and saying, wait, our average salary was $54,000 last year and dropped to 53, and before that it was, 54,800 and it's dropped. A big part of that has to do with it's not our salary schedule, it's our average teacher salary. So something significant happened with COVID was a mass exodus from the workforce, from a lot of our workforce. And as people left, that's newer teachers coming in. So our average salary may drop because we've got so many more teachers in their first 3 years within the profession. All right, questions about that? Keep scrolling down, Brendan. And the last thing is looking at state assessments. So this is our state assessment. So percentage, and can you make this a little bit bigger, Brendan? Yep, all the way down to the bottom. All right, so this is the percentage of students who pass the state assessments. And again, this is looking at what the state average is, peer group, and the district. Something fascinating. You can spend the time there and go into all of the little hyperlinks that are within there. But there's an actual raw data chart that you can go into. When you see that 33% for the state average in math, 40% in reading, 24% in science. There's a difference between elementary and high school. The high school numbers on average are higher than that, what the average is. It's just a different beast. Number one, we're testing everyone 3rd through 8th grade. At high school, it's that one time that they're doing it. What is it, 10th grade, Violetta? That they're doing?
Yeah, it's 10th grade.
Yeah. So it's, number one, it's a higher percentage at the high schools than the elementary schools. You've probably heard the idea of a student's zip code should not matter, in terms of the type of schooling that they get. But we see that we can have long conversations about what state testing is, the fairness of it, the way tests are the questions are designed, all those types of things. But one thing that is very evident in Arizona, if you go into that data file and break it down, the state average is absolutely set by elementary districts with low poverty. In fact, if you go into that data set, just of low poverty elementary, the average is 34% in math, 40% exactly in reading, 24% exactly in science. Our low poverty elementary districts set the norm and we're compared, to them. But that's why they have the peer averages in there. So listen, we are aspiring towards high achievement for all students. And so those numbers that you see in yellow for the district, we're going to do better than that. We're not okay with those numbers. We're not happy with those numbers. And we have great work that's happening in our schools now to increase that. But there's a big story when we're talking about achievement. So that, I showed you in the beginning who our peer district was and where we sit with that, and also where we fall compared to that next poverty level. We're at 24%. The next poverty level is 25%. If you see the averages right there, 20% for math, 28% ELA, 16% for science. That is our peer group out of our 11 districts: Osborne, Crane, Tolleson, Washington, Roosevelt, Tempe, Creighton, Fowler, Riverside. That's the average of those districts and what our numbers are compared to that. I can tell you that we are the highest poverty of that. You would think that there are other districts, but actually at 24%, we're right there. If you were to look up the other districts, they may be at 23%, but we are the highest poverty in that group. Our achievement's right in the middle, but if you just kind of look at those achievement numbers for us, 18, 23, 14. If you compared us to our Phoenix Union districts that are in that group, which would be Roosevelt, Creighton, Riverside, our averages exceed all of our Phoenix Union peers, peer averages. But within the entire peer group, that's where we fall. If you look at the rest of our neighbors that are in a different peer achievement group, Murphy, Phoenix Elementary, Alhambra, Wilson, Isaac, Baltz, that chart looks totally different for them because the middle number, which is the peer group average, instead of being 20%, 28%, 16%, that peer group average is 16%, 22%, 12%. So you may see of some of those, if you were to go on to, let's say, the Phoenix Elementary or the Alhambra page, which you can do on your own, you may see, oh, wow, they're really, they may be exceeding their peer group, but their peer group average is at a lower place. So I do have to say I'm very comfortable with how we have done compared to all of our Phoenix Union Elementary districts, but they're not necessarily, by this breakdown, all considered peers with us, even though some of those in the next peer group are at 25% poverty, we're at 24% poverty. We're in a completely separate group. That dividing line is literally our number of 24%. I'd be happy to share those numbers with you. But, there's so much to dig into. I was just trying to take you through all the areas of the report and show you what they all show. And then if you want to dig deeper into it, into us, into comparability and things like that, I'd be happy to do that with you guys. So any questions about our report or the readings of it?
Any questions? No, thank you so much. I'm sure if you dig in and have questions, we'll fire those off to Dr. Robert. Thank you for the detailed, in-depth dive on the spending report. Moving on to board development. We had some homework assignments for ourselves from the last time, which was reading The Governance Core, which is the first book in our little book club series here. And the homework was to read chapters 1, 4, and 5. I'm not going to call anybody out. I just assume everybody got their reading done. And this is really a time for discussion and reflection about that. Dr. Robert, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, so there's chapter 1, which we were supposed to have done last month, so that we kind of saved that. Chapter 4 is a pretty quick one, and it's about the first 100 days, right? You guys are on day what? Close to 90, right? So this is almost like we should have read this in January, because you can assess how we did, I guess, in terms of onboarding you guys within your first 100 days. But I'm just kind of curious if there were any standouts in that first chapter, just about the themes of governance, because I guess where I would like to hear some conversation is kind of comparing that with chapter 5 and that whole idea around coherence with governance, because that really gets into the ideas of you operating as a board in coherence with administration, in coherence with staff, with all staff, that we're all moving in the same direction, but not recognizing coherence as lockstep. But, because you're, like you guys as a board, you're not individuals, like what you think has to be where we go. It's, number one, back from chapter 1, having that moral imperative that you kind of work together in defining how you as a board are going to govern, and then are you moving collectively, and kind of recognizing what are some of those challenges to coherence. So kind of a framework. Maybe we could get into some of those challenges to coherence, or if there's anything from that first chapter you wanted to discuss. I see you got some notes in your book, Luis, so feel free. If you want to take us in a particular direction, we can go your way too.
The thing that kind of came to mind in my mind throughout it, especially when we talked about moral imperative and coherence, and really opening up more space to have some deeper conversations about values, to really have some deeper conversations about strategic plans, and I think there was some of that work was done before I got on the board, talking about, a lot of the stuff that we see right now in terms of our integrity, equity, joy, growth, relationships, those words, and strategic plans, a lot of that stuff was done before I got on the board. So when we talk about moral imperative and coherence, I think we're a pretty great board, but we need more space and more opportunities to have those discussions about what our values are, how we can, do goal setting around those things. We've done a little bit about that, but now having, 4/5 of us really have only been here for, 2.5 years or less, really want to open up more opportunities, more space to have those kind of deep conversations, like strategic planning type conversations, so we can kind of reflect on and, our coherence and not being in lockstep, but about kind of what our shared values are. It's good to refresh those things, especially with so many relatively new folks.
And even with that defined idea of what those values are, our mission and our vision, one of the questions that they kind of ask in the book is, what is your idea of good democracy in education? Like, under our defined principles, under our defined values, how does that look for you as a board, within this democratic space that you sit in?
Yeah, I think it's good to have debate and disagreement sometimes, and to ask the hard questions, and to, uncover and talk about the stats that we don't like, that aren't where we want them to be. And I think we do a pretty good job of it, but we've got our challenges to do that as well. I like the part of the book where they said, talked about micromanagement, and they said sometimes micromanagement is just, defined as doing something the superintendent doesn't like. I thought that was pretty funny. But I'm always cognizant about that, and not wanting to, move into a space that's not proper for me as a board member to be in. But I think we need to open up more space to have some of these big picture policy values type discussions, so that, that everybody, our staff and our teachers, know that kind of where we stand as well. They know that what our values are, that we've got their back, and it's nice to have a refresh of that discussion some of those discussions that probably happened before, my time at least. Other thoughts? Don't let me take up all this space here.
No, I thought the reading was great. In regards to the first 100 days, like there was definitely, it was great, like hearing from current board members, inviting us out to coffee, to talk, to chat, and like really get to know each other so that we could make sure we have this cohesive board, right? And so, I mean, I think we're a small district, but mighty. I think all of us up here, I mean, I guess I can only speak for myself. I care about the district, I care about our teachers, I care about our students, our staff. And so I come here with that attitude, and I see it in everybody that sits up here. And so we already have this great relationship just because of what we care about. But it got me thinking, when we were talking about the strategic planning and those things that happened before us, how do we include everybody, right? So I know Phoenix Elementary is doing some listening sessions, gathering information from the community itself. Not sure how much you know about that, Leanne. But I see the board over there doing some really cool, innovative ideas that I haven't seen other districts do. And so that might be something that we consider doing in the future.
Cool. Other thoughts, comments?
I think, being new to the board, everybody's been really welcoming, not only, those of us that are sitting up here, but all the administrators and the teachers and the other staff that we've interacted with. So I'm really thankful for that. We have a really great community here. I think for me as a new board member, the idea of having like a governance handbook or something that's specific to our district, or, something, some districts do, more formal retreats or something like that might help to just get an idea of some of the culture and, not necessarily that we have to do things the way that everybody's done it in the past, but just kind of getting an idea of some of that. I think for me as a learner, sometimes I like to sit back and observe. I do ask a lot of questions, which, I think is very helpful to me, just to learn the process. And, I know all the veteran board members have been very helpful, and Dr. Robert has been very helpful in learning some different things with the district. I know, speaking since you brought up Phoenix L, and that's, where I am as an educator, and seeing that, I think, there are some really innovative things that their board is doing as an outreach. I would like to see us do even more of that. But, even more so, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're listening tours that they're doing right now, but I think we, as a board, could shift our thinking into doing more of listening tours, to really get that feedback. Because when we sit up here, we get a lot of information that's great, but there's not as much of an opportunity for dialogue. And so I think that would be really awesome. One thing that really resonated for me as an educator, when I see board members or administrators in our schools more often, or coming in, or just, I've had our assistant superintendent once came and, here's a book, go ahead, you're gonna read with the kids. And she just, she got right in there, and it was great. And it was really cool for me as an educator. And it was really great for the kids to see, here are these other people that help make sure that I have a great education. And it's not just my teacher that cares about me, but it's everybody in this community, whether they're at the school, they're on the board, or they're at the district office. And I think as a unit, we can really function in a positive way for our kids. So, I'd like to expand what that looks like for us, and thinking in the future, how do we, provide, whether it's a handbook or a retreat or something like that for our next future board members, so that they really come in and feel, confident and ready to go with their board leadership.
Great. Anything else?
I was kind of looking at, one thing that I was looking at today before ending the meeting was the coherence model they have in here, where it's talking about governance sits outside of the management and administration, curriculum instruction, how we need to be, probably should bring it in a little bit tighter, which made me kind of chuckle because there was a line in chapter 1 that read, board members are elected to govern, not manage or teach. But the book itself is recommending that we be more involved within curriculum instruction and administration. I wouldn't mind, as a board, sitting down and actually talking to those committees, talking to people. So like you were talking about, being a little more listening in, hearing more from within the district as well, just so we're more informed about what's happening, not just visiting schools, but hearing from people making those decisions. And then I was just kind of laughing because we're talking about other districts. I can't help but think about Scottsdale when I'm looking at this as well, being there and just like, I'm glad we're a lot more coherent than they are. Because it's just, I feel like we'll make decisions that are better off for people because we're unified, not uniform.
Great.
Yes, just to add, I will say that I found it interesting that, one of the things that we have done in the past, and that I don't know if it just stopped because of the pandemic or I just stopped. I know that the committees are still continuing, but having each board member be part of the committees. I know we had this conversation in the past where I suggested this, that, I think it is important, and this is how it happens on the water board, where every committee is formed by our board members, and I think that's so important. And then everyone's available to participate. Even if you're not on the committee, you can join all of the committee meetings, so you can understand what's happening. That is something that I've never experienced here, and I'm involved with curriculum. Like, that's when I first got elected, I thought that was going to be part of the job. I learned right away that was not what I was elected to do. So it was really interesting, just to learn what our role was, and our responsibilities. And as everyone who sits on this board, we all have so many responsibilities besides being board members, families and jobs. So one thing that I will say as a board member who's been here the longest is that we have always had a very not always, but we've always had healthy board and community. So regardless of like our ideologies, because we didn't, like, this is the first time where, like, I think for the most part, all of our values, it wasn't always that case, at least not when I got elected. But we worked together for, not just like our students, but our staff and our community, our parents. And I'm still a parent, but I was a parent of students at the time. So it was very different. It was a very different dynamic for me, but it was a very different dynamic with the board. Things have changed, and I often forget that what I know is not what everyone else knows, or my experiences, in the past aren't what you guys know, because you guys are new. So I do feel like, as this board is very, very, very new, those ideas of like having like, a handbook for the future board members or some type of training would be great. Because when I first joined the board, like, it was like one of those like what teachers don't believe in, which is a sink or swim. Like, you have to learn on your own and figure it out. And very lucky that we do have like professional development opportunities like ASBA, but like, you don't get to learn everything that you need to do. Like, you learn about like policy and the legal stuff, but how do you actually work with the board? That's very different. And those are things that I've actually learned, through my journey, and then becoming president, and then doing these things, which were the readings, and how to work with the board, and what is our role, and what is, everyone else's role, and like, how different did it look when you're a parent in this position? So I had to navigate a lot of different things as you guys are navigating right now. And, I do believe that more support from the actual district and the board would be healthy for new board members, because I did feel extremely overwhelmed when I was a new board member.
Well, good. And I know everybody has a lot of responsibilities and things and families and significant others. And so thank you for taking the time to do the reading. I think that's really important. Moving on, I think my thought was we'd assign a few more chapters in the book and circle back for a quick discussion at our next meeting. So, unless anyone has any objections or other thoughts, I just thought we'd assign the next two chapters, 6 and 7. Does that sound good? Okay. That's your assignment. Don't read ahead. Just kidding. You can. Leanne?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't know if, maybe it's fun for the audience to hear us discuss the book. It might be good. But I don't know if it would be possible to maybe consider when we do the discussion to do it in like an executive session or something. I don't know if
I don't
that's.
think we could because
Okay.
we're open meeting law. I don't
Okay.
think we could do that. But people are certainly, we can move it even farther. And people are certainly free to leave. We could move it farther down on the agenda or do it at a work study.
They're not totally free to leave.
Not totally free to leave. I know. I hesitated saying that right when the words left my mouth. But the public is free to leave, I guess I should say, and free to be here as well.
Sorry.
No, we'll keep that in mind.
Ultimately, this is your meeting.
Okay, but I think it's part of sharing our values. I think it's maybe boring, but I think it's somewhat helpful. So for folks to hear us. So all right, moving on to reflections/feedback on the meetings, and I'm going to start with Violeta.
Well, first of all, I don't get tired of hearing all the wonderful things that people do here in our district. And so just hearing about Daniela and being full circle from being a student, makes me reflect on my own journey of being a student at North High School and now teaching at Metro Tech. So in the same district and actually working with my French teacher from high school, who just texted me. But yeah, so I just think it's wonderful to really hear those kinds of stories. Those are the stories that really create community for us here and people listening at home. But also a reflection that I had when I was going through the board package for our meeting today. There was a part where it said providing families with interpretation in their home language is essential to building strong partnerships with families, especially when it comes to discussing students' academic growth. And I just want to say I really appreciate that our district makes that a priority, because coming from a household where my mom did not speak English, neither of my parents did, and I was an interpreter since I could understand both languages, I really appreciate that we have those resources available. And then the last reflection that I had is within the benefits package, hearing that there is a mental health resource for staff. It's so important. Being a teacher myself, I know how stressful it can be and how sometimes you just need someone to talk to, and I'm glad that we have that resource available for our staff.
Leanne.
I'm really thankful, for having this great community here. We, really are aligned to make sure that we do what's best for our kids, and it's evident. I did want to share, I really enjoyed being at Encanto for the reading program, the Read Across America Week. It was amazing to get into the classrooms. I'd like to do more of that. I know we brought up, trying to find ways to get more into the schools and more boots on the ground. I think that is one of the most important things that our board can do. And so I would like to do more of that, and I really appreciate the board being ready and hopefully excited to do that too.
Yep, absolutely. Elenia.
Yes, so first I wanted to recognize all the women on my board and here present. It is Women's History Month, and nothing in this world would get done if it weren't for the amazing women.
Absolutely.
A lot of the work, the important work at least.
Absolutely.
So celebrating all the women who are here, and just even reflecting on the conversations and even what was just mentioned earlier about what Violeta mentioned about Daniela, I think that's a full circle, right? Like you attend the school, you want to come back, you want to work here. That says a lot about, the school and our community. And then the little things as I'm reflecting on my journey as a school board member, like language acts is something that, I'm very passionate about. Like that's stuff that happens when you have people who represent the community and bring those things up. And not only do you have someone who was a former interpreter who talked about it all the time until we made it a priority, you have a superintendent who is a principal who is bilingual, right? We understand that that is critical and important in order, for the success of the student and the family in our district. And mental health, like we also worked really hard, to be a trauma-informed school. So it makes me feel happy to know that all the little things that we've worked for are something that, I don't think about them anymore, but to hear someone appreciate them makes this work like worth it, as we are bombarded with so many things as school board members. You forget the little things that you're working on are actually impactful and making a difference in everyday lives, especially for our students, our teachers, and our community. So it was really, I don't know, it made me happy to hear that, Violeta, so thank you. And just my last reflection, like it's always great, even though we don't have a lot of people today, it's always just great to be here and to, be part of this community that is such a happy and grateful community.
Thank you. Luis?
I think my big reflection for tonight is every main meeting we get to hear from schools, but it's great to hear today from everyone up here in the administration office about what's happening behind the scenes and what great work they're doing. So I'm just thankful for those that shared today. And just, it's always awesome to be here with, a unified board.
That's right. Thank you. And I would say, echo a lot of the same stuff. I won't repeat it though. But it was mentioned earlier how much stuff has been going on around our district since our last meeting, and there's been a lot. It's been the parent-teacher conferences, both in English and Spanish. I was there and a part of those, and they were absolutely wonderful. There were book fairs, and there were street fairs, and all sorts of fairs, and it was just a lot of activity in our district and in our schools, and just a lot of excitement, especially for the kids, and just being on our campuses and seeing how happy the kids were to pick out a book or to go and participate in all the wonderful things. It was absolutely delightful. And a quick shout out to everybody who helped with the Melrose Street Fair. That was awesome. Like Dr. Woodland set up, and if I had to name everybody, I'd forget someone, and I would feel bad. But Dr. Gross and we really held it down for a while during our shift. Yes, we did.
I couldn't have done it without you.
We were rocking it over there. But I love that kind of stuff, and just getting out there, getting out in the community, and love doing more of that stuff, and just to see our teachers and our principals and our staff, coming out on a Saturday and being out there in the sun, and just how excited that people were, and just it's cool to see people, I guess not in this setting. We can let our hair down a little bit and just kind of have some fun and be a part of a community together. I love those opportunities and really want to look for more of those opportunities. But that's with all the fun, we've got our challenges. I don't want to paper over that, and I think that's something we talked about today, and something we want to continue to work on. Teacher pay, retention, test scores, all those things. These are significant issues that we still need to stay focused on. So that's my reflection. Dr. Robert, anything?
Yeah, I'll have a little Joe Biden moment here. My dad used to tell me, but my dad used to say he always wanted us to be a doctor, and he didn't mean EDD either. I don't think that was he meant a medical doctor.
Yeah.
But his caveat was, if you're not a doctor, make sure your paycheck's signed by the county. And that was important to him because of something that we did tonight that I do not take for granted in the least bit. People from his generation, and I feel like the old person now with how much I value benefits packages. Having health care, having a pension, these types of things. And I always tell people if they decide they're going to leave the district, I always tell them, don't pull your money from ASRS. You'll probably come back to us one day too. But I am so grateful for having my check signed by the county, and what that means with the robust, there are always things that we can do to make our plans better, but the package that was negotiated on our behalf, I'm really glad that we're able to expand some of those offerings with more ancillary services and the work we do to keep the costs down as much as we do. I wish we could do so much more in terms of those family offerings. But nowadays, like even the employee offered benefits are getting smaller and smaller and smaller the more you look around. But we haven't. We've been able to maintain the level of full healthcare cost coverages. Like, there are many districts that have abandoned the plans that we have and have high deductible only plans that have that don't offer any other types of things. So very grateful for what you guys approved tonight, and part of that contract of all of our folks having their paycheck signed by the county.
Very cool. Very good. Okay, any future agenda items? Again, coming back to Violetta first.
Yeah, so just so that we have it on the minutes, so the information for the exit interviews, so that we can see those, that data. And then I don't know if this would be good for a future work study meeting, but you talked about the strategies of bringing the testing scores up, and so I think it would be great if we could learn about those, as well as maybe even come up with some ideas together.
Great. Leanne?
I'm not sure if this is a future agenda item or if it's something that can be done on the back end, but I do want to make sure that we get some scheduled times for board members to get out into the schools. I personally would love to see if it was, at least once a month, we rotate a different school or whatever that looks like, and have, one or two board members that go. It can be something as simple as what we did in Kanto, and go read in some classrooms, go, volunteer, to help out, teach a lesson or whatever that looks like, or just, help out with like a campus cleanup. But, I'd like to move that along. So I'm not sure if that's something that goes on the agenda or if something it should go on the back end.
Sounds good. Elenia?
No agenda, no future agenda.
Luis?
I'm wondering if we can get back to, for future agendas, pre-approving any potential travel dates for board, professional development, like NSBA is coming up in a couple weeks. I mean, I'm personally not gonna know that one. NLEO's coming up in July, and that's one I would like to go to. Just that way we don't have to, approve them every time, like we were doing last year.
Sounds good. Two quick things for me. One I kind of mentioned already, I'd love to do at some appropriate time, to big discussion or some discussion, maybe work study about teacher staff retention, what we can do around that. Especially issues about parental leave, childcare, those type of issues. Would love to see that. Second thing, this is more of maybe we have to post it as a future agenda item. We can discuss that. I guess it depends on who might go. You might, if you were driving in, or like me, biking in over here, you biked past a sign, a big orange sign that says Osborne Road Community Meeting. Okay, that was, that was the result of a lot of the work that folks in this community have been doing. Some of you may remember we had a Safe Routes to School committee. Principal Carranza was on it. Principal Martin was on it, and we had a whole bunch of parents on it who were talking about being concerned about their kids being safe walking and biking to school. Well, the fruits of that we're starting to see bear fruit, and that's in that meeting on March 28th. So if you go to that sign, the link to that sign, you'll see the City of Phoenix is having a meeting about Osborne Road and what to do about Osborne Road to make it safer on March 28th at 6 p.m. I think we're going to be doing a little what I'll call a viewing party here March 28th at 6 p.m. Nobody has to be here, although maybe I'll twist Jamal's arm to help us to get it set up. But we'll probably be kicking that out to the members of that committee and anyone in the community, especially parents and community members in and around Encanto and Clarendon who might want to come and listen to the city's proposed changes in response to the concerns that people have about Osborne Road. So depending on, I guess if you're a board member and you plan to come on the 28th at 6 p.m., you're definitely more than welcome to. I suppose let us know, because if there's 3 or more of us, we'll probably have to do a little soft posting of that. So maybe we'll do that anyway, just in case. So that's all I've got.
Ed, can I
Please.
add one more thing?
Yeah.
I was hoping that we could have a discussion just about, I know, that, you know, there's been stipends that the board has approved, but if it's possible to have a discussion, just looking over a list of the various stipends that we offer in the district, and, you know, maybe looking at, do we want to up some stipends? Are there stipends that we're not really using, or we don't think that they're, you know, I don't want to say necessary. Are there areas where we might feel like there should be a stipend for something? So just having a discussion about those that we have in the district.
And just to be clear, I think my understanding when you say stipends, not necessarily those big ESSER stipends, but stipends that are attached to specific positions or other maybe educational or things like that, right?
Yes,
That
so
makes sense.
thinking like hard to fill stipends.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the PBIS facilitator at your campus, is there a stipend for that? Is there a stipend for the MTSS facilitator, for running a club, for sports, whatever? You know, if there's a comprehensive, I know in Phoenix South we have a comprehensive list of all the stipends, and it shows what, you know, fund it's paid out of and what, you know, what it's for, who gets that, how many, just to kind of review what that looks like and, you know, see if that aligns with what we need in the district, and if there's room, you know, with ESSER or M&O or other things to maybe grow some of those. I think that helps with our recruitment and retention as well.
Sounds good. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Have a great day, guys.